By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Let me say it again. By failing to prepare, you are preparing for failure. Why is preparation so important, not just in sports, but in our everyday lives? Reason number one, it reduces errors. When you're mentally and physically prepared for the task at hand, the chances of you messing up, they're not that significant as if you didn't prepare. I could sit up here and list off 99 other reasons. The last one I'm going to use is you're confident. Whenever you are prepared, you're not as stressed out. Confidence is key, and I'd say it's highly important for anything you're doing. Whenever you're confident in whatever you're doing, you almost 9 out of 10 times perform better. But whoa, hold on. How do you build that said confidence? It all goes back to where we started. Preparation. You would think a coach who is about to play in the national championship would come prepared and ready, right? You know what? Maybe to say he's unprepared, that would be an overstatement. But the other head coach in this game is already one step ahead of him. Kind of odd, he's already one step ahead of him and the game isn't even 24 hours away. I know exactly what you're sitting there saying or thinking to yourself. Yo, Matt, how is he already ahead of him? Now, what I'm about to show you isn't going to be the main focal point of this video, but I did find it funny, and I think some of you would too. It kind of gives you a narrative on the battle between Nick Saban and Kirby Smart over the past 4 to 5 years. Both of the teams yesterday, Alabama and Georgia, they landed in Indianapolis and they did their pregame interviews. In one of those interviews, I'm sure if you have Twitter or social media, you saw that Nick Saban, he had some swag to himself. He pulled up in a leather jacket that nobody's seen him wear. It was a cool sight to see, and he was also smiling and having fun. You just don't see that much out of Nick Saban these days. I believe his daughter clarified he's had that jacket for over 30 years. Here's the thing, he coaches in Alabama and it doesn't get too cold there, so you never really see him dress for winter occasions. Around the time when the two teams landed, it was something like 17 degrees. On the other hand, here's where things get a little interesting. Meanwhile, for Kirby Smart, he didn't even bring a jacket. All he brought was a sports coat, and he made that clear. He said in his interview, quote unquote, "I just brought a sports coat. I didn't even have a jacket. Luckily, my wife brought this jacket for me because she was prepared." I want to make this extremely clear. That is not the main point of this video, but I thought it was ironic because it kind of goes hand in hand. Do I think it's a big deal? No, I wouldn't clarify it as big, but it's kind of concerning. The head coach, the guy leading your team, wasn't prepared for winter climate. Kind of odd if you ask me, considering you knew you was going to Indianapolis and it's not really warm there. I'm not going to make much of a big deal out of it for this one reason. He's probably been preparing for the game so much, he hasn't even looked at the weather, and it's understandable. Moving on with this video, I guess technically you could say Nick Saban is already now, counting that, 2 steps ahead of Kirby Smart. If you want to label that at 1, you can do so. Let's get into reason number 2 and the focal point. If you're a Georgia fan or have been keeping up with Stetson Bennett, you would know it hasn't been that great for him when he plays Alabama. I'm going to let you know right now. It's not a coincidence he looks good against other teams and terrible against Bama. Taking a look at the numbers and the brief numbers, because I've already went over the in-depth ones, Bennett is 0-2 against Alabama, and his team has been outscored 82-48, and he's thrown not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 interceptions. I know what you're saying. Yo, Matt, why are you telling us this? We already know it. Just keep it in the back of your mind. I know we got some Georgia fans, or heck, just college football fans in general watching this video. If you've watched Georgia and Bama play the past couple of times, what is their biggest problem? What would you say Kirby Smart's biggest problem is? I believe 99% of you, if you answered that in your head or you wrote it in the comments, and even I fell victim to this, we would say quarterback play. Kirby has made dumb decisions with the quarterbacks, and he maybe shouldn't have started Stetson Bennett and should have plugged in JT Daniels. After diving into the details, and I want to make this clear, I'm not a big stats and numbers guy, but I found something quite interesting. When I took a look at it, I actually sat back in my seat and I said, are you kidding me? That's actually why Nick Saban is ahead of Kirby Smart. We're going to have a mini throwback. In 2018, when Alabama came back to beat Georgia, Georgia's running backs only had 75 yards and 60 yards and didn't even average over 5 yards a carry. In 2019, they didn't play. Fast forward in time to 2020, last year, their running backs, Zeus and Milton, only had 57 yards and 40 yards. And last but not least, in their most recent matchup, their leading rushers, James Cook and McIntosh, had 38 yards and 32 yards. You want to know why I didn't read off any of the quarterback stats and numbers? Because they almost don't matter, and we'll touch on that a little later. What's happened in the past 3, 4, 5 years and Alabama continues to come back is Georgia, Kirby Smart, the entire staff and program, they can't get over that mental hump. And what has happened and affected that is they're starting to overcomplicate and overthink things. Kirby's not stupid. He watches TV and he hears the critics and rumors. He understands there's a lot of pressure on him when it comes to playing the right quarterback. With that being said, on the other side of the ball, Nick Saban and his staff know it doesn't matter who they play at quarterback. They don't care if it's JT or Bennett. They know to beat Georgia, the recipe to beat them right now, and it's worked every single year, is to not stop the run, but contain it. That's right, I said contain the run. They're okay with giving up 4, 5, 6 yards, heck, even 10 yards here and there. They just don't want to give off the big chunk plays where they're getting 25, 50, or 70. Pete Golden, who's the defensive coordinator for Alabama, and Nick Saban, I've watched the film, you can go watch it yourself. They're okay with giving up 4 or 5 yards a carry. As a casual fan, you wouldn't think that's acceptable, and in reality, if you ran the ball in every play, it wouldn't be. But what has happened in these games, if you pay attention or just look at the scoreboard, Alabama's scoring nearly 40 points every time. And what Georgia has failed to do and realize, I don't know if it's Todd Monken's fault or Kirby Smart's fault, is that Alabama is willing to give you the run all day long. If you want to have a 20-play drive where you get 4 and 5 yards a carry, they'll let you do it. But Georgia's not taking it. What's happening is Alabama's scoring so quickly, Todd Monken's getting it into his head, okay, I got to answer back fast because if we don't, Alabama's going to score again, and it messes up the entire system. What makes it even worse, at the same time in your back of your mind, Kirby Smart, Todd Monken, they're trying to prove to all these haters that Bennett can be elite or can be good, so they're calling these pass plays on the regular when they don't need to. Where does Georgia thrive and really look like the #1 team in the country? When they're running the ball effectively and then they hit the teams with the play action fake. Is it boring to watch? Yes, it's the most boring thing I've seen since 2010, but it works. When does Stetson Bennett look like that good / maybe great quarterback sometimes? When he's rolling off of the play action fake and he hits his tight end. Kirby and Monken know this. Bennett is not Bryce Young. But here's what he is. He's almost a slightly worse version of Johnny Manziel when he's outside of the pocket. Y'all know how I feel about old Bennett. I think he's mediocre, but when he's outside of the pocket, he's extremely comfortable and he can show off his legs or he can throw it. But that right there has been their problem over the past couple of years. Nick Saban is sitting back in this defense where they're going to have coverage and you can easily run on them, but he knows Kirby Smart isn't patient enough to do that. Last but not least, before we end off this video, I got one more question that I see everybody talking about. Can Stetson Bennett beat Alabama? I'm going to tell you the blatant truth. I'm not going to fabricate it. No, he can't beat Alabama. But here's what he can do. If you watched my previous video, you know that may be controversial because I picked Georgia to win. And yes, I'm still picking them to win, even though that's really against my rules about betting against Nick Saban. Here's what Bennett can do. He cannot lose them the game. Let's throw it all the way back to 2015. This is when Chad Kelly led Ole Miss into Alabama's own stadium and upset them. Why did they win? Chad Kelly had 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions with over 300 yards. Keep that in mind. The only stat I want you to remember is 0 interceptions. The next year, in 2016, Alabama's only loss was to Clemson in the championship game, where Deshaun Watson was magical, 36 for 56, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns to, look, what do you know, 0 interceptions. Moving on to the next year, 2017, Auburn beats Alabama 26-14. Jarrett Stidham was the quarterback of Auburn. Looking at his stats, 21 for 28, 200 yards, 0 touchdowns, but 0 interceptions. I think you guys know where I'm going with this, but I'm still going to read you off the last couple of losses. 2018, when Clemson annihilated Alabama, Trevor Lawrence, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. 2019, aka Joe Burrow year, Burrow goes off for 400, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. A couple weeks later against Auburn, once again, Bo Nix, mediocre game, 15 for 30, only 1 touchdown, but look, 0 interceptions. In 2020, Alabama went undefeated. They didn't lose. In their one game they lost this year against Zach Calzada, he was 21 for 31, played the game of his life, 3 touchdowns, only 1 interception. You saw the remedy of every quarterback that beat Bama. The only one that threw a single interception was Calzada. And Stetson Bennett, in his last 2 games against Bama, his last 2 losses, has thrown not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 interceptions. All the quarterbacks that have beat Alabama in the past 5 or 6 years, some of them have had, or not some, most of them have had great and outstanding games. On the other hand, we also saw Bo Nix right there, for example. He didn't play out of his mind, but he didn't lose him the game. That right there is what Stetson Bennett's got to do. He doesn't got to be a Superman, a Spider-Man, and save the day. Just don't lose the game. It all goes back to Saban being more prepared, and he's already a step ahead of Kirby Smart. He knows to beat Georgia, and it's what I've shown you, the straight up facts, he's got to stop the run. Because if he limits them to 4 and 5 yards a carry, Kirby Smart and Todd Monken, they're going to freak out and they're going to start to press a little. And when you press with a Stetson Bennett quarterback, it doesn't turn out to be good. Will Stetson Bennett lose him the game? Will he manage the game? Or will he, and I could never see this happening, win him the game? I guess we'll have to see. And there's one thing for sure. I'm excited to see how it plays out. Of course, I want Alabama to win, but if Georgia does win, I can't be all too upset. It was almost destiny, and we keep it in the SEC, and I'm talking about the championship. Will Kirby Smart and his staff, his quarterbacks, his running backs, his entire team be more prepared than Alabama's? I don't know if they'll be more prepared because Nick Saban is the GOAT at preparing for big-time games. I'll just leave it at this. It's going to be interesting. Let me know your thoughts down below. But with all that being said, that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something. If you're new to the channel, what are you doing? Join the family. Hit that subscribe button and leave a like for more. And as always, let's be great. I'm out, y'all. Peace.